That's right. You're listening to and watching the Arsenal Review USA podcast. I'm Joel. Kyle's here as well. Kyle, show your beautiful
Hello.
face. Yeah, clean shaven. Must be the Florida thing. It's just like too warm for beards or something down there.
Yeah, typically this would be the time of year for a significantly, well, not long, shaggy long, but warm facial build of a beard. And just can't do that when the low of the this time of year is like 60. Sometimes you get into the 30s and 40s overnight, but then it warms up to 65 during the day. So yeah, you just can't.
First world problems. Okay, so
Right.
so since Arsenal's lost Giroud, who they showed a lot of yesterday during the Chelsea game,
Right.
really not too many beards in the first team. That's neither here nor there. I mean, there's beards where they mattered. Socrates, for one. Socrates. I always want to call him Socrates because it sounds a lot more philosophical.
Yeah.
Call him Socrates.
Right.
But whatever you call him, definitely a presence yesterday, beard or no beard, whatever you want to call the thing on his face, in the Arsenal defense, along with Koscielny. It was kind of a throwback, and I kind of liked it. We'll talk more, I think, about the defense and just the Chelsea win in general. Maybe also some change up. Obviously, Sven Mislintat announced that he's leaving Arsenal after what's been like a year, if that.
That's the head scout, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And Sanyeli, basically, also however you say his name, effectively, I think we can get into it more, but kind of taking over the reins with Mislintat leaving. Mislintat, of course, being our go-to or our, liaison for the likes of Aubameyang, for Socrates, and a few others there. Kind of our Bruce Dortmund go-to there. Anyway, he's going to be leaving, so that brings up a lot of questions. Who's coming in next? Mark Overmars, I think even what's his name? Edu has been linked with Arsenal, coming back to Arsenal in that role, that scout role. But it remains to be seen how much that really changes Arsenal. Right now, things are going on the evidence of yesterday, okay on the pitch, but there's a lot to be done recruitment-wise before January is over. The question is, will anything be done before January is over? But first things first, Arsenal against Chelsea did not look like a great game starting the game. I have to be completely honest. Lee Dixon said something that I thought was pretty telling of Arsenal all season long. He said it basically looks like their back line right now is like a bunch of forwards were thrown in there. We're told before the game that they were going to be playing defense, and they're just kind of figuring it out as they go. Which as you looked across like all the replays, they try to show like how this was almost offsides, those kind of replays, and they never were because Arsenal's back line was like this, it did look very telling. It did look very accurate. And I thought we were going to be in for a very high scoring game with most of the goals on Chelsea's side. Luckily, that wasn't the case. I don't know how you saw the defense. I think that was the biggest takeaway throughout the game, because for me, the defense was terrible to begin with. And then, well, we'll talk about why this is, and then it got better as it went on. I don't know if that was because Chelsea just got bored or ran out of ideas or got tired or what, but it did evolve during the game, and I thought it was great to see two linchpins finally back there. We haven't had linchpins in center defense for a while, I feel like, but it looked like we had them yesterday.
Yeah. I think if you had everyone 100% healthy at the beginning of a season, you would expect Socrates and Koscielny to be the main two center backs. They're building that relationship. So with Koscielny being back and not playing really not starting in a Premier League game too often yet since being back. This is obviously something that we haven't seen a lot of, so it was good to see in that regard. But I agree with you in that if you look at the game as a whole, Arsenal are very, very lucky and have to count themselves very lucky to not have conceded in the match. Chelsea hitting the bar a couple times, Leno making some saves, just general non-finishing from Chelsea. Could have been very different, I think, the game overall. I'm very happy that Arsenal kept a clean sheet and won 2-0. We actually have a pretty good track record against Chelsea outside of Mourinho. But, as of the last couple years, I think we beat them twice in Alexis's first season. I want to say 2016 maybe. Or
Are you counting the FA Cup also or no?
Well, FA Cup as well. You could throw in there, but in terms of the league, it maybe hasn't been going fantastic. I think we're about 500 against them now since Mourinho left the second time. I wrote some from stats down we can go over later if we had the time, but essentially, it could have been very different. It could have been a Liverpool type result had Chelsea been able to finish a little bit better. However, that wasn't the case, and Arsenal did enough to keep the clean sheet and did enough offensively in the first half to get the job done. I would have, being the selfish Arsenal fan that I am, I would have liked to see Arsenal score a few more of their chances. They didn't create a ton in the second half to necessarily suggest that they were going to go on beyond 2-0 to win. But overall, it was one of those match days where Arsenal stepped up to the occasion and got the business done. I mean, considering the fact now they're, I think, 3 points out of fourth place with Chelsea, or behind Chelsea, rather, with the same number of games played. Whereas, you are talking about a real 6-pointer in this case. I mean, if you lose that match, you're now, I guess they were 6 points out, right? So they would have been 9 points.
A 9-pointer.
Yeah, it was a real 9-pointer. It was your classic 9-point match. So, it would really, I think, in the context of the season and what we've seen from Arsenal in what are some, in December and the first part of this new year, what people are calling, December being the new November, perhaps. This was it was a must-win game. And, a draw wasn't going to work, and certainly a loss wasn't going to work for Arsenal. So, regardless of whether you have 4 forwards playing defense for you or whatever the lineup may have been, Arsenal, I think, stepped up in the case. Got lucky in a few instances, but to walk away 2-0, even against a forwardless Chelsea side, I think is a pretty darn good result.
Yeah, a lot of points there. Definitely the defense was the biggest one. They actually stepped it up eventually in the game. Yes, they did get, had that Pedro lob gone in, I think things would have been right. We were looking at like a 3-3 or a 2-2 or something like that, or worse. But it didn't, and that really, I think, that kind of allowed Arsenal to circle the wagons and address what it is that they needed to do to actually play defense against Chelsea, proactively. We talked about this all the time, but to be a defender. Not a professional defender, but to be a defender, you have to do some things proactively, organize yourself at least, at the least. At the most, you proactively kind of seek out the other team and cut down their opportunities, kind of close down their space, et cetera, et cetera. And Arsenal didn't do any of that, not even the organization part at the beginning of the game. And then they slowly kind of grew into it, which is worrying to me because it smacks of a team that doesn't set up to play defense and really doesn't. They don't look like they go out onto the pitch at the beginning of these games ready to play defense, like they've been instructed by the manager, to play defense. They look like any pickup team. You go in there, you kind of play your own game individually apart from other players, and then as you go, you let in a couple goals, bad things happen, and then you kind of look at the people around you and say, okay, guys, you stay here. No, I'll stay here. Start guarding that guy. You start to knit together a little bit. That's how Arsenal's looked like for a while. Sometimes they never knit together. But in this game, it did look like that was something that just wasn't on their radar to begin with. And then as they went through it, credit to, they kind of became cohesive defensively, started keeping a somewhat uniform line. And yeah, they started to actually pressure Chelsea when they're on the flanks, trying to get crosses in. Things that started to frustrate Chelsea. And I mean, okay, hold on. Did Chelsea have a shot on goal in the second half? I want to say no.
Well,
not when I remember.
Yeah, I mean, shots that just go wide or hit the post technically aren't shots on target. Right, I believe I saw the stat that said Chelsea didn't have a shot on target until the 82nd minute.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and that, I mean, when you think about,
post, so.
yeah, when you think about something like that, I mean, yes, the same could be true for Arsenal too in various games over the years where they look more threatening than the statistics would suggest. So Chelsea looked much more threatening than getting their first shot on target.
They did look very They did look very Arsenal. They looked very Arsenal. Chelsea did. Like where the goal is going to come from doesn't matter. We got all this possession.
Right.
Definitely looked very Arsenal. What was great to see from Arsenal, and like you can talk about, gosh, you can talk about. Your tactics, the way you set up, the players you have all day long. But Arsenal, they just showed yesterday the perks of actually trying and actually wanting to try. So many of their chances, and they had a lot of chances. Like Arsenal had a lot of chances, especially for a big game. I feel like Arsenal usually doesn't have those chances. We look at the Liverpool games, and it's like, oh, if this one chance had gone in, then it'd be different. And then you think about it, it's like that was the only chance, really, like clear-cut chance. But they had a lot of clear-cut chances. And they really pretty much all came from what I wouldn't call slick football. It wasn't like slick passing. It wasn't like a lot of players like, on the same wavelength, really cutting through, playing insightful passes. They were just like really, really trying. Like you look at the second goal, basically it was just hoofed it across field. So switch field, knockdown header, and then Socrates he pretty much shins it into, I mean, he didn't shin it, but it looked like he shinned it, dips it into just anyone who's interested in the in the 6-yard box, which it's Koscielny, who, by the way, was up there a lot for some reason yesterday. There was a couple instances where it was well after like a set piece or a corner, and he's up dribbling around their penalty box. So there's a lot of players who you could tell they wanted it. They wanted to get chances. They wanted to manufacture chances through any means possible. And they ended up doing that. And I don't know how you instruct your players to do that game after game after game. But, yeah, it didn't look like the Arsenal team yesterday needed too much in-depth offensive tactics to make chances. Let's put it that way. So that might just mean Chelsea sucked on defense. I don't know, but they seem to manufacture a lot of chances from just sheer will, like the Lacazette goal, which was outstanding, very underrated goal, by the way, because it was a really terrible cross that was whipped into him very, very low and like spinning away from him. Took it down perfectly, enough to scoop it out of his feet and get it around 2 defenders. And then score, and then hit a really good, really well placed shot. That chance included was just manufactured out of virtually nothing. And I think credit to Arsenal. I don't know who said what before the game, but clearly they knew they had to win this, and they just made it work. They didn't get hung up on their little systems or anything like that. They just banged in 2 goals. One of them went off of, Koscielny's effectively his second try. He had a point blank header and then that. So, when your defenders, getting that many chances, that's, that says something about the effort of your team offensively.
Yeah. And not to mention that Torreira almost ruined the first one. He just got out of the way.
It looked like he was, he just about got it right.
I think we probably would have forgave him. And assuming we go on to win that. And then, of course, Koscielny is probably the best non-traditional body part goal scorer that Arsenal has ever seen. I mean, he's got the shin balls, he got the shoulder balls, he's got I think he scored with his shin or maybe his face when in Newcastle late in the season. However many seasons ago it was to keep us in the top 4. So he'll score with anything that's legal at this point, and it's good to see him back, get on the score sheet. I mean, a guy like him, you think about the time he's served and what he's been through with the injury, to get hit back on the score sheet and, not to score the winner perhaps, but to provide that cushion. Should Chelsea have gotten one, sometime at the second half, it would have been, obviously providing some cushion. So we'll see if that run continues. Still a pretty busy period of the season here in the next month and a half. So I would imagine you will see some Mustafi, and I guess that's all we have left, right? In the center backs, Mustafi and maybe Monreal if he comes back healthy.
Yeah.
I think another thing that was actually as makeshift as the back line seemed, I thought, Kolasinac wasn't awful. playing left back. It's not as bad as he has been, and so that was certainly good to see. And yeah, I mean, of course, what's weird in all of it is the meltdown somewhat continues with the fact that Ozil was healthy and had trained all week and, only on the bench for Arsenal.
Right.
Why are you not starting against a team that, you are going to need some creativity to score? We saw it from Lacazette. Most forwards go down there. They don't shoot themselves. They try to chip it across the front of goal or something like that. Right. But really good momentum here, hopefully, coming into this FA Cup tie, because away at Old Trafford is never easy. And then, of course, we have Man City after that, and then quite the run.
Cardiff City and then Man City.
Oh, okay, Cardiff City.
Man City soon after.
Yeah, creeping up on us here, and I don't know if we want to mention it. I will briefly here on this podcast, considering we didn't have one last week, but we could have easily bent over and taken it from Chelsea after what we saw against West Ham, because that was definitely Arsenal's worst performance of the season. You saw, I think, the worst performance of the season from players like Aubameyang, from Guendouzi, from various others. And then you saw one of the best performances of the season from a guy like Ramsey, who I'm actually very pleasantly surprised. Not that I would have expected he wouldn't continue to try hard, but a guy that's basically 1 foot out the door at this point is continuing to play well and seems to have a real commitment to his final months with the club. And so that's nice to see. And, you can't really say anything about the way it's gone down with him, because I think he probably would have come to terms maybe a little bit more rich than people would have liked for a player like him. But I think he eventually would have come to terms had Arsenal reoffered, or they would have renegotiated at some point. So again, that's still a really weird situation on top of what we're seeing with Ozil. But hopefully those things can, don't distract from a really solid win. And it helps us kind of get over this drought and this, of course, this slump that Arsenal have been in. And then maybe the last concerning thing that we're seeing that needs to be addressed, and not addressed. The best way to address it is get him to score a goal. But Aubameyang, lots of chances recently and 0 goals basically produced out of it. I think 7 a.m. kickoff, Tim Bostel from 7 a.m. kickoff threw up a stat, not of his doing, but I think shared a Binho stat or some sort of stat that was thrown up. Essentially, Aubameyang was converting, the first half of the season, was converting 60% of his big chances that were created for him. And at this point, it was up into the Tottenham game. So December 2nd. So up into the Tottenham match on December 2nd, Aubameyang was converting 60% of his big chances. And since the Tottenham game, he's converted 8% of his big chances. Right. So quite the slump for him. I mean, 60% compared to 8% is no good at all. So
his percentages are definitely down. Down. Like his
still getting chances. That's the important thing. He's still getting chances.
And he's still scoring from time to time. I mean, he scored 2 games ago. So
right. Now I think that was the one finish. I think that was the 8% of
right.
100 that were possible. But
so I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting. It's just changing topics quickly, or somewhat. Guendouzi had a decent game, kind of a quiet game. But I think after the West Ham game, everyone was wondering, like, what are we doing with Guendouzi? I mean, the guy just gave away the ball so many times in the West Ham game,
right?
Because he's playing that role that we kind of don't like to see him play, where he's too involved. Like, okay, great, we like that you're composed and you're courageous, moving up from deep lying midfield, but give the ball to someone who can actually pass. As soon as you transition away from that,
right.
And he had against Chelsea, he had much more of like a lockdown mission type role where he was just patrolling certain areas and certain players, and we didn't see him trying to do too much with the ball, which I think is great for him because he can patrol all day long. He's got so much energy and he's such a pest to the other team. It's when he tries to do too much offensively with the ball that we want to kill ourselves watching him. And he was very, very disciplined, I thought, against Chelsea. And it looked like he annoyed a lot of them. So that was nice. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, moving on. I guess we could touch on Ozil, though we touched on Ozil last podcast. We touched on Ozil every podcast. I'm again still not surprised to see him not playing after more of what's come out this week. Obviously, there's a lot of people saying it's such a waste of money for him not to be playing, and it is. Yeah. It is. But on the other hand, the manager definitely it's something to do with the manager now. Emery is seeing something he doesn't like with Ozil. Obviously, there were all those, maybe not all those, but a couple more notable, more reliable reports saying that when Emery first came in, he stressed a very, very hard work mentality in training. And a lot of players took to that, and Ozil wasn't one of them. So that's why he got brushed aside. And now apparently Ozil is working harder, whatever that means. Good job.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So you'll see, especially within the last 2 or 3 weeks, since the turn of the calendar year, you're seeing a lot of social media posts from Ozil, with the bicep emoji, yeah. And everyone's working hard in the gym, another great week of training, like he's going through some sort of trial in his life. This is so
right. It's like a Rocky montage. It's a social media Rocky montage.
Yeah, some sort of. He's so afflicted by this fact that he's fit and ready to go, and he's been working so hard and not playing. And I was joking with people on Twitter as the I think essentially he said something to the effect of well, regardless of the situation, I'm still going to work hard. It was a picture of him in the gym. I want to say, well, regardless of the situation, you're still getting paid.
Yeah, right.
You don't care. Yeah. I mean, do you really care that you're not playing because you're making $350K a week? You're making 5 times the average salary or whatever in the UK.
It is right. It is a bit of a cynical view. Sure, and everyone would like to think, these guys are professionals. They're always going to do their darndest. But at some point, you got to think, the guy's not leaving. He's getting paid an obscene amount of money. It suits him down to the ground, Yeah, I'll go to the gym every day. I hate working out, but I'll go there and take pictures of myself working out for whatever he's on, Right. That's the cynical part of you, kind of discounting his professionalism and the fact that he wants to be playing. The other part of you, though, is obviously you got to get to the games, and he's not being played, so he's not getting to the games. The coach isn't playing him, but you want to show hard work. You have plenty of opportunity to do that when you do play. Torreira shows quite a bit of hard work, probably in training, but definitely when we see him in a game. So does Guendouzi, so does Lacazette, so do so many players for Arsenal now. Socrates, that's what hard work looks like to me. The Socrates, the fist pump after he won, I forgot where it was. This is in the second half. He won a goal kick off of some slight slight deflection off of, I don't know if it was Willian or something or who it was, but he scored a goal. He had this huge huge celebration. Right. And, that's hard work to me, because you're getting jazzed about something that no one else notices, but you did do it. Again, you did it right, and it paid off, and you're happy with that. Contrast that to Ozil, who doesn't get something, absolutely right, or his teammates don't do something absolutely right, and he's he's the Incredible Sulk again. I don't know. Has he replaced Nicolas Anelka as the Incredible Sulk? Obviously, that was Anelka's former nickname.
Well, I would say, the best French comparison actually probably would be Lacazette. So Lacazette kind of gets
what?
Lacazette gets a little bit. He gets a little bit pouty.
Well, okay, maybe not as demonstrably.
No,
Giroud was the most demonstrative Frenchman when it came to pouting. Yeah. So in Arsenal's recent history.
Let me clarify, so people aren't sending me hate mail.
Yeah.
The reason why I say Lacazette is because Lacazette shows his frustration to the game, or the lack of maybe things going Arsenal's way, rather than a teammate, because there are players like Ozil or others in the past that their frustration, you can tell quite clearly that it is directed towards the player or the teammate rather than just the general situation at hand. And Lacazette, he's just a fiery guy. He's very competitive. Obviously, he wants to be on the pitch. He gets that sulky kind of face going when he gets subbed off at certain points. And, I think he just wants to be out there so badly. And, he's a big game player for Arsenal. Their stats were shown up there on Twitter and other places after the Chelsea match that he's pretty much scored against every huge club in England or assisted in some capacity,
which I think is great because Lacazette was criticized by Jose Mourinho back in the days not being a big game player, and now he's shown in many big games that he is a big game player and a hard worker. So
and we talked about that. Yeah, that very point too. I think his sulky face, if you will, sometimes stems from the fact that he's running his tail off up front, and then he looks behind him, and people aren't doing the same. So that frustration around that sort of, because he has been working hard. I think you mentioned the fact that Emery came in and demanded that this work rate and the effort change of the way they approach training in particular, and of course that carries over to the games. Lacazette, I think, has really bought into that, and we've seen that on the pitch from him, which is fantastic to see because he's on pretty good wages. He came in as a record signing up until Aubameyang or whoever it was. He was a record signing, I think, right up until Aubameyang. So £53 million or whatever it was. So it's not like he was some slouch of a forward that came in and we expected big things from him. And he could have very easily been the next kind of prima donna striker that expects everything to be handed to him. So the fact that someone like him, again, who ever so slightly has been in Aubameyang's shadow this season in particular, because of Aubameyang's scoring form, especially early on, for him to get the goal that he did, I think has been fantastic. Right. And we need him to be scoring more, because if you look at the stat sheet, you have Aubameyang on 16 now for the season, I guess just 14 in the league. And I think Lacazette has 8 league goals. I want to say 8 or 9. And the next closest is Mkhitaryan with 4, and then Ozil has 3, and then it's basically 2 and 1s all the way down the board. So you have Aubameyang and Lacazette doing the vast majority of the goals scored. Aubameyang is not in great form, a little bit of a slump for him right now. So if we can get Lacazette off the mark here much more often than we've seen from him maybe in the last 2 months or so, I think, at least offensively, Arsenal should be ticking again. So, we obviously need goals to win the upcoming games.
So anyway, back to the sulk thing. I mean, I mentioned Nicolas Anelka, and he was the incredible sulk back in the day. For him, it was probably mostly his off the field, like pouting and whining. Ozil probably doesn't do that as much. Most of the time, he's just silently raking it in, if I may, off the field. I know we're giving like Ozil a hard time here, but the guy is, it really is hard to get sympathy for a player who can be brilliant, is brilliant, but does it so frustratingly infrequently, and then is pretty much absent the rest of the time. So even when he is playing, he's kind of hot and cold, but then he doesn't even play that much, and it turns out a lot of that might be because he doesn't train very hard. So that's the Ozil thing. Again, nothing really new on that front. What is new is obviously Sven Mislintat announcing that he will leave for Arsenal. We don't profess to be any, know too much about the goings on of the backroom staff or the staff there at Arsenal. But, hopefully you hope that someone is going to come in to replace him very soon. And again, we should probably do a little more research on all the signings he made, or the signings that he did make, in terms of, scouting people, or arranging to get people into Arsenal. But, it seems like Arsenal have had, it's kind of a mixed bag under Mislintat. He's been here about a year or so. Obviously you mentioned Socrates, Aubameyang, Mkhitaryan also. So there's a bunch of Dortmund boys. And then, I guess Guendouzi would be a promising one.
He's been around. He came in November of 2017. So 18 months at this point.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
So, kind of again, it's if that's not long enough to know even the signings that you did bring in if they're any good. Obviously, these days we're we try to speed up our assessment of things, but still that's not that long. So all those signings could turn out to be fantastic. Some of them are already, I'd say, fantastic in terms of Aubameyang and Socrates, and then obviously promising with guys like Guendouzi. But yeah, it's hard to say. Hard to say what this looks like going forward for Arsenal. You just hope someone does move into that role sooner rather than later. There's not some power vacuum that's just uh, um, that's just occupied or gobbled up by Senlehi, head of football. So it's yeah, that obviously that was just another parting of the ways here in the Arsenal backroom staff. That was notable, and I think it's notable because it's coming so soon into someone's tenure at Arsenal that you kind of wonder why. Something wrong? Do people not agree with something? So far be it from us to know, but that was notable this week.
He's not scouting hard enough at training.
Yeah,
so Emery is.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it definitely. I mean, you get the sense that he was, I don't want to say forced out, but didn't come to terms with Senlehi, and that's why it's kind of like a mutual parting of the way. So obviously Senlehi, wears the pants, and Mislintat, for whatever reason, is kind of sensing that he'd be wanted elsewhere, or maybe he's not wanted here. So. Yeah, just fast times at Arsenal High this January. Whether that means anyone's coming in terms of players, I don't know. We're still looking at Suarez, I think, on a loan deal. The other Suarez, not the bitey one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
the defendy one.
The defendy one. I mean, if he bites on defense, that's fine. As long as he doesn't get caught. Yeah. So hopefully that does come to pass. Especially not knowing, I know this isn't like a like-for-like replacement necessarily, but not knowing exactly the status of Hector Bellerin. We don't know the status of his knee, right?
No, I just looked online, and I think the initial thought was that it wasn't a knee; it was a thigh tendon or some sort of thigh tear, which is still, I think, like 9 months out, sort of thing. And yeah, basically Arsenal.com says that we'll know in the next couple of days, but it doesn't look good. It's not looking positive.
It didn't. Yeah, when you get stretchered off, it's never good.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, the good news is Arsenal finally won a game, and they did it against a team that they really need to beat, Chelsea. So, like we said, 6-pointer there. We go on to Cardiff on right. No, sorry, not Cardiff. Got the weird Friday game, which is, of course, against Man U in the FA Cup. Then Cardiff on Tuesday. And then Man City, I guess it would be the following Sunday or something.
Yes, Sunday. Yeah. And then you're back. Then we're back into, away to Huddersfield Town in the Premier League after City on that following Saturday. And then we're back into the quarterfinal, or the round of 16 for Europa League. So,
okay. Right. And the Man U game, that's at Old Trafford? Is that correct or no?
That is correct. Yeah, it looks like a 7:55 kickoff local time.
Well, then Google sucks.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's at the Emirates.
I was going to say it's on top. Google does the weird, for everyone who can commiserate with me. Google does this weird thing where in football or maybe it's basketball, it correctly it shows the home team last for, I want to say, like college basketball, but in soccer it shows the home team first, like when it lists your matchup, So I'm always like, wait, are we? Yeah, right.
Yeah, no,
so that is key.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, do you have a prediction then for said key game, since that's our next one?
Well, being that it's home, I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory.
2-1. Let's see if I can get my pen right. Okay, 2-1. Hopefully you're writing that down. I'm going to say oh man, it's gonna be. I feel a replay coming on. But seeing as how we're riding our good form, I will also say 2-1. Yeah, 2-1, 2-1. Cardiff, you want to say anything? Are we just going all three results here, or all three games? City or Man U, Cardiff, and City.
Yeah, we probably should just in case.
All right, then I'll do Cardiff. Cardiff's also home. They suck, so I'm gonna say 3-1.
All right, 3-1 for Joel. I'll say 3-0.
All right, and then what about City?
City away.
Yeah.
Ooh. 2-1 loss.
Ooh. 2-1 loss. Okay, I have a 2. I have a 2-2 draw for that one. 2-2 draw. Yeah. So, anyway. Any contests this week? Any
No.
FA Cup related?
So
when's the last time Arsenal beat Man U in the FA Cup? Shouldn't be that long.
This season has been a little bit different to the point of you may not be aware. I think we mentioned it last podcast that Huari Designs, one of our longtime prize sponsors, is now officially, has officially closed their doors. They are, I don't know if they went out of business or if they decided just to close the shop. I'm not sure of the ins and outs of that, of what happened there. However, Roughneck Scarves is still up and running, and they're owned by the same people. And so there's some things to work out of what's happening exactly with prizes. So the prizes that we typically give away, like t-shirts and scarves, are on hold for the moment. So I'll just make that announcement. However, we do have,
oh boy,
we do have this sort of stuff. We have our little stickers and decals and all of that. So what we'll do is we'll just post something online. I don't have a trivia question off the top of my head. I was going to try to think of last time we beat Chelsea like 2-0 or something like that. But I guess we beat them 3-0 not too many seasons ago.
Right.
But yeah, just, keep posted online, interact with some of the, maybe the first 5 people to comment on our next 1-minute review video or something like that. We'll send some stickers too. But, those that listen to this and watch this podcast regularly should know how to
find us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. Cool. Well, unless you have anything else, Kyle, I think that's pretty much it for this podcast. A good week for Arsenal. It was a great day for Arsenal yesterday. I've not had that much fun in a long time, even though I was kind of crapping my pants at the beginning of the game. It was still a well-played game all around from Arsenal. In defense, yes, but for the final, I would say final 50, 60 minutes, their best game of the season. Is that what you were saying earlier, Kyle? For you, is their best game of the season? I would maybe say.
Well, no, what was not. I think they got lucky. This is our luckiest game of the season.
Okay.
Maybe. No, I was saying that we saw the worst game from some players against West Ham and saw actually one of the better performances coming on as a sub from Ramsey. I was pointing out that he still seems to be, working hard and trying to put in a shift. I would say the best performance of the season, even though we didn't keep a clean sheet, was the 4-2 against Tottenham. That's what I would say was the best performance. But this one, I won't say anything necessarily about it being the most complete. However, I think if you think about how Arsenal seasons or how the games have played out under Emery so far, the majority of our goals being scored in the second half in the league so far this season, to go up 2-0, to be up 2-0 at halftime and then hold on to that lead and go on and keep a clean sheet and so on. I mean, it would suggest that it was a pretty darn good performance, probably in the top 3 for sure. Yep. And so, like we said a million times already, the momentum is big in any sport for that matter. And when you see a player like Koscielny back, scoring goals, Lacazette picking up kind of the slack of Aubameyang being in a little bit of a slump. Those are all important, I think, aspects of getting out of the drought that we had seen, especially through the tail end of last year and now into this year. So fingers crossed against Man United, because I think they're playing well under their new manager. You get Jose out of there, anything can happen for whatever clubs he's ever been a part
of. It's amazing the like almost like the negative effect of a toxic environment in your dressing room. Who knew that was a bad thing?
Right.
But
exactly.
It's
not gonna. Yeah, I mean, they are a much different team from the disappointing 2-2 draw or whatever it was, right? 2-2, 1-1, yeah, 2-2. When we went there earlier in the season in the league, and we felt really kind of crummy about that game because they were so bad, and we let them back into the game, basically every time we scored. They're going to be a much different side with a lot of players that I think have been reinvigorated with a new coach and a United legend, maybe some would call, Solskjaer. So, we'll see what happens. We'll hope for the best in that one.
Yes, we will hope for the best. All right. So by the time we get in touch with you next, it'll probably be on the other side. Man U, Cardiff, and City. So some big games in there.
Right.
Obviously, if Arsenal play well, they'll have to shore up the defense a little bit. But on the other side of the pitch, on the offense, they play the way they did against Chelsea. I think they'll be in good shape in at least two of those games. Let's put it that way. So I think, having said all that, we'll leave you until the other side of those games on the next podcast. So until then, as always, remember, support the Arsenal and have a good week.